Today in Flex in the City, we talk to Emanuele Vignoli, who's the CEO of HSBC in Luxembourg, who dives deep into gender finance and his passion for boosting diversity in financial services. He stresses the importance of authentic leadership, continuous development, and staying curious in our ever-changing world. All that's happening right now in Flex in the City. Good afternoon, everybody. This is Rachel Treese for Flex in the City. And I'm absolutely thrilled to have our second Italian guest on Flex in the City. It's Emanuele Vignoli, and Emanuele is the CEO of HSBC Bank in Luxembourg. Buongiorno.
Buongiorno, good afternoon, Rachel, and thank you for the invite. Pleasure to be here.
It's a pleasure to have you. I'm afraid my Italian is not so perfect, but I do love the language. So I'll next time we meet, I'll try and practice my Italian with you. So. Very good. So thank you for being on Flex in the City. I had a little look at your background and love to find out a little bit more about your journey. And, I know that you're Italian and I know that you spent some time in London. So tell us a little bit about your journey and how you came to be working in Luxembourg, Emanuele.
I've arrived in Luxembourg just over 2 years ago, and next year will mark my 20th anniversary with HSBC. But really, I've been working in the banking sector for over 25 years. And you mentioned that I spent a little bit of time in London, but actually I spent a lot of time in London. As post-graduation, I moved in London to work for Citibank as a graduate.
Right.
So all of my professional life has been spent outside of Italy. I actually never worked in Italy.
Ah.
I still speak the language, but I never worked there. So I started at Citibank as a graduate in London, then joined a Dutch bank called ABN AMRO. Some of you might recognize that in their transaction banking department, and then joined HSBC in 2005. And my aspiration since I graduated was always working in a truly international organization that allow me to interact with colleagues and clients across the globe. And I had the pleasure of being able to do that across the three organizations that I've worked with, and particularly over the past 20 years with HSBC. And on the personal front, I'm married with 2 kids, a 16-year-old daughter and a 13-year-old son.
So I'm curious, do your children know what you do, Emanuele?
They do a high level, I would say, but my daughter now being 16 and she's now at school here in Luxembourg. I moved from school in London, and last year, as part of her course, she had the opportunity to do some work experience in the market in one of the financial services. So all of a sudden, she had become more curious and trying to understand what we do and what are the opportunities within the banking and financial services in general. So she's become a lot more curious.
So Emanuele, I know that you have a 16-year-old and a 13-year-old, and I've got a 17-year-old at home. How is it that we're going to be able to attract young talent like that to the industry? Because, of course, there's been some of the challenges over the years with the branding of the industry. What's your view on how we can make the industry a more attractive place for them to want to come and join?
Rachel, yeah, absolutely. This is a very relevant point and a question that we ask ourselves almost on a daily basis. I think, firstly, it is really important that we share with the younger generation the great journey that they can have by working in a financial institution, and how we can help developing their knowledge and career on a global scale. So I think that's really the key message. In terms of executing it, I think we need to get more involved with schools at all levels, lower school, higher education, university, and explain what we do. We recently had students as part of the Shadow Day organized by the Luxembourgish government, which is a fantastic organization and initiative. And most of them that didn't really know the opportunities that they could have within a bank. So it is really our role and our duty to explain them the multiple careers that they can have within a bank, allow them to understand it, and also help them in their career choice when it comes to the end of university. So I guess in a nutshell is spending more time with students, explain them what we do, and then help them in this journey.
Absolutely. Well, you definitely need to come and speak to my daughter because she thinks everyone who works in banking is an accountant. So
yeah, absolutely.
What are the traits that you think are really important and that you've aimed to adopt yourself, Emanuele?
Some of them are really basic, and things like respecting each other. I think a lot of times I've witnessed behaviors that maybe are not of high standards. To me, the basis of respecting each other in the workplace, but even of course outside the workplace is very important. Another one is about a lot of people that have been, their authentic self. I think it's very important to bring your authentic self to work. Sometimes you need to adapt, you need to adjust yourself a little bit, but generally it's important that try and be as authentic as you can. The other one, again, it seems pretty obvious, but lead by example is very, very important. You need to be a role model for the people that you work with, the people that are working for you. So those are some of the traits. Clearly, another one is around knowledge, and I've always admired people that they're already senior, they've reached certain level, but they keep on developing their knowledge, both in terms of deepening, but also widening across a variety of fields. So they're being curious and want to develop your knowledge. I think is always something that I've admired, and something that is now a made part of my career growth, really.
Absolutely. And this is a question I often ask leaders. You're in financial services. There might be some young people who go, "Well, that's a little bit boring." What is it that gets you out of bed now in the morning? What is it that you're passionate about, Emanuele?
It really goes down to job satisfaction. I think you need, like in everything, you need to have a purpose in life. I mean, my purpose is really trying to make a difference every day I come to the office. And making that difference could be that I've done something good for one of our clients. I've done something good for the development of our teams. I've cooperated with the people in the market to add value to the society that we operate in. So it really goes down to having a purpose and being able to deliver and adding value to whatever we do on a daily basis. I think whatever that is, it could be, of course, for me, is in banking and in what I do. For other people, can be in anywhere. But in the end, we live once. We go one life. It's very important that we find our purpose. And then once we have, then we give all of ourselves and trying to deliver as best as we can. And if we do that, I think you really will get satisfaction out of that. And you'll find to get out of bed, even if sometimes early in the morning.
Absolutely. So when you're coming into the office, how do you personally facilitate the growth of the people that are around you and that you're working with every day?
I mean, clearly it's fairly tailored. I mean, I think that the growth plans need to be adapted to different personalities, but in the end, it really boils down to three factors for me. I mean, the first one is trying to understand by getting to know your people, what do they really want to do? Sometimes people find themselves in jobs that maybe are not right for them, or maybe they don't love them enough. So it's really trying to understand what is their career plan. Once you've done that, the next step is trying to understand what are the gaps. There are some gaps on some soft skills, some other, there are more subject matter that develop. So once you've got the gap, then the third and last one is around helping them to close the gap in a phased manner. So either through internal course, external courses, on the job training. But I will go through those three steps to allow people to grow within the workplace.
So if giving some advice to a young person about the financial services industry, what advice would you give them, Manuel?
What I'll probably say, first of all, invest time in learning and be curious. I mentioned it before. I think it's important that people come to the job prepared. I mean, don't underestimate the complexity of the work that of the environment that we operate in, the risks. So it's important that they really invest into learning. I think that's number one. Second one is be patient. I think it's important to be aspirational, but at the same time, you can't be in the job for 6 months and already looking, what is my next step? What can I do to move on? I think you need to, a lot of people, particularly this generation, they want to move very quickly. Yeah, and I'm a believer that you need to prove yourself and show to the people around you that you can actually deliver before moving to the next step. So I think being patient, important. Something else is around. I think people say, what would you do differently from the past? And I always say, to be honest, I wouldn't do really anything differently, because things that I've done wrong 25 years ago, I didn't have the experience or the insights to do them differently. So allow yourself to make mistakes, really learn from them, move on, and try not to repeat them, of course. But I think your development is also not only based on successes, but also some of the mistakes that you've done, you learn from it, and you can grow from it. And finally, it's work hard and promote your achievement. It's always important to work hard, show hard work ethics, and promote what you're doing. I think that's also very important.
Yeah, absolutely. I know you do a huge amount of work, Emmanuel, in the community around gender equality and next generation. Do you want to tell us a little bit about that work that you've been involved in and what that means to you, especially that you've got a son and a daughter, so that you're familiar with the differences?
Absolutely. HSBC as a group invests a huge amount of time and effort in promoting diversity and inclusion across all areas, gender and all the other ERG that are available. And that's something that we really believe in. We do believe that a diverse organization, diversity of thought will become, will deliver a more robust and profitable organization. So that's something that we do promote at group level. On a personal level, you mentioned, yes, obviously having a son and a daughter, you want to make sure that everyone has equal opportunities when they grow up, they go into the professional world. And what I'm involved personally here, I was lucky enough to be called by the Minister of Finance at the end of last year when they launched this gender task force. And the idea was to have a representative from the market, and I'm representing the banking sector. And we developed some ideas, some areas where we can improve. We identified 7 different areas, and I'm responsible to work on the education stream. So I mentioned before the importance of education. So we have a large team of about 12, 13 people from all different areas. We have people from the regulators, consultants, other financial institutions, technology company, and we have set up this working group where we come up with ideas that then will be implemented. But the idea is we work much closer with schools at the lower education, higher education, and university to see how we can better embed financial education into the school system and make sure that gender finance is a topic, and we promote that within the market. You'll probably hear more in the press over the next few weeks because we're coming up with some of the details that we have developed. But that's something that is really close to my heart and obviously close to our group, but also to me personally.
Absolutely. And I'm looking forward to supporting it because it's such an important topic, and it's great that HSBC are right behind it. So what are the skills that you think are needed in this really important industry in the next 5 years? AI's upon us. What do you think are the skills that are going to be needed?
The first are Yes, before we get into the AI and some of the themes that are obviously quite prevalent today, I would say the first one is the ability to manage team in an hybrid setup. I mean, post-pandemic, there's been a complete change in the way people work and operate. So there is an expectation that most of the organization work in hybrid type of setup, people working from home, from the office. So a lot more difficult to effectively manage your teams because so clearly it is working. It has worked during the pandemic. It's working post the pandemic, but it does require an adaptation because there is a risk of people being alienated and not being included. You could risk of losing a little bit of the culture of the organization. So the ability to manage teams is something that people really need to focus on and develop. You mentioned artificial intelligence, Gen AI, digital in general, tokenization. That's something that is very topical and is here to stay. So absolutely people need to understand what that involves, the opportunities and the challenges that are connected to AI. The next one is ESG. I mean, ESG is clearly something that is very, very relevant for the present and for the future. So people need to, and that is why also we're talking to some of the students at the moment in the banks. We also employ scientists. We want to have people who are actually expert in the ESG space that can help us whenever we work with our clients on transition plan. They are expert in this matter. So ESG is definitely one of the key skills. And probably the last one, which is something that has been around for many, many years, and it's probably something that I've discovered when I started working, is the ability to adapt to change. We are in a continuously evolving world. The market is changing rapidly on all fronts, and I think people really need to be able to read and adapt to the changes very quickly.
Mission, I'm going to dig into a couple of those points, really important points that you've made here, Emmanuel. What do you think in that hybrid environment, to the skills that leaders really need that are maybe different from pre-pandemic skills? What would you say that they are in this hybrid environment?
I think obviously you'll be managing different type of people. You're managing people who are 100% engaged, other they need to be supported a bit more. So I think the engagement part of the management side is going to become very, very important. You'll be able, you'll have to really be able to get to know your teams even deeper, understand what works for one individual versus another one. Is someone that is working for more, maybe focusing too much on their day-to-day work and losing a little bit the wider perspective of what we're trying to do from a wider strategy side. What is the culture of the organization? So keeping the people engaged, I think, is something that is going to be really, really important and challenging, because there isn't one size fits all. I think it's important managers will tailor their approach to different individuals within their team. So that engagement process is very, very important. The other aspect that I tell my teams here, I think really giving the flexibility is very important. It's good, it works, it helps the productivity, but at the same time, you need to keep people connected. So the connectivity aspect, the idea of, we talked a lot about the future generation. Imagine people coming to the office from the university and not finding anyone in here of the experienced people that could transfer the knowledge, that could talk to them on a daily basis. So the connectivity aspect and ability to give back to the younger generation, I think, is really important, and something that a manager needs to try and retain, because the transfer of knowledge doesn't work as well on Zoom or on a phone call. I think you need to have the human interaction and social interaction, which I think is still essential.
Absolutely. And you mentioned something else really important that really resonated with me, is this ability to be able to adapt to change. And we all know that, as human beings, we're animals, so we're twice as likely to go to fear than we are to connect. Again, if you were sort of giving some counsel to other leaders out there about how can you help people adapt to change, what would you be saying there to them?
I mean, obviously, you need to make people aware that the outside world is changing. So you need to give them the right tools of being able to adapt. Sometimes the change could be linked to a soft skill, which might be easier. Some others might be to technology, where you do need to actually try and deepen the knowledge of your teams and send them on training courses. Make sure that the bank and the group, whatever organization you're working in, invests in training programs. So again, it's going to be a mix of factors, but I think the key is really make your teams aware that things change, strategy change, the banks are a big organization, they need to adapt to how the markets behave, to social political changes within the world. First of all, is around awareness, making people aware that the change is always behind the corner, and has always been. I mean, if you look at the past now, AI is accelerating it, but it has always been there. I mean, if you look 20, 25 years ago, we're moving from manual processes into automation. We're talking about more sophisticated way of artificial intelligence, but change has always been there. So the first thing is making people aware that they need to adapt, and change will always be there. So awareness is the first point, and the second one is probably giving them the right tools so that they can be ready when changes happen. But it is a process. I think people need to be ready for it, and they need to be trained for it.
Yeah, absolutely. And so I've got a question again, sort of going back to that change. If you had a magic wand and you could really help the financial services industry evolve with the macroeconomic environment that we're finding ourselves in now, what is it that you would do if you had that magic wand to be able to help the industry?
First of all, maybe we need to look a bit at the history. I think a lot of people think of banks, they still require me. If you look back in history, the first bank was really 2000 years before Christ, when the merchants of the world were trading into grain and exchanging across the world. So banks have been there for a long, long time. And I think the key for success is that they keep evolving, they keep themselves current, they keep investing in and focusing on innovation. So I think that's really the key themes. We need to make sure that we keep up with times and we make life for our clients easier. For example, further automation, self-serve, but also get more and more involved in the social aspect of what we're doing. I mean, we talked about gender finance, we talked a little bit about ESG, so the continuous investment in green products, for example, green loans, green deposits. It's essential to help our clients in that transition, to contribute to the ESG agenda. So the key is really to keep the bank relevant for our client, and most importantly to our society. If we will be doing that, then banks will still be here for a long time.
Absolutely. If they're contributing to society, that's everything. So when you're not doing this really important job and you're not working on a lot of the other projects or being a great dad, what is it that you love to do outside of financial services, Emanuele?
I mean, I really like the outdoors, Rachel. So I think I try and spend as much time as I can with the family in outdoor exercising activities, mountains or seaside. I don't really have a preference. I like them both, but outdoor is probably the main area where I focus on when I'm not at work. Trying to make the most and give back quality time to the family, which clearly sometimes we work such a long hours is no ideal. So I try to really switch off and give back to my family, which is very important, and to myself as well. Trying to invest some time on my own personal well-being.
So family and self-care. Well, I couldn't agree with you more. Two of the most important things in life. Emanuele Vignoli, thank you so much. Grazie mille for being on Flex in the City and for sharing your wisdom with the world. Thank you.
Thank you for having me, Rachel.
And that's a wrap for today's episode of Flex in the City. We hope you enjoyed our insightful discussion with Emanuele Vignoli. Don't forget to subscribe to our podcast on your favourite platform and leave us a review. Stay connected with us on social media for the latest updates, exclusive insights, and behind-the-scenes content you won't find anywhere else.